All right, good afternoon. Like FIFO said, my name is Sid, and I am an engineering manager at SDF, and I'm here to give you an update on what the data platform team has been up to this past year. He kind of spoiled my surprise, but we've unveiled a new product that is geared with analytics in mind, and so I'm going to walk you through a couple demos on how you can use that. Now, I've spent the majority of my career in data analytics, and the reason why is because I love mysteries. The ability to sift through a mountain of data, uncover those hidden clues, and assign meaning that can give you insights into how the world around you works is immensely gratifying to me. Now, I'm no detective, but one of the greatest detectives said it's a capital mistake to theorize before one has data. And I think all of you in this room recognize that and know the importance of backing up these decisions you're making for your business with facts and data, and you want that. And even though there's all of this excitement around data and people recognize that they need to protect their data as if it's a first-class asset for their business, in the latest Data and AI Leadership Executive Survey, only 26.5% of organizations reported having achieved that goal of becoming data-driven, with even less respondents reporting having established a data culture. And so we have to hold in tension this fact that there's this huge hype cycle around generative AI and how it's coming for our jobs, but square that with the fact that smaller organizations feel like they can't become data-driven. And I think one of the reasons why that's the case is because data analytics is costly. If you were to survey your options available in the Stellar ecosystem for how to stand up a Horizon API or a Sorbonne RPC node, there are a lot of options available where you can just click a mouse with a button and it appears. But if you want to do the same by answering a seemingly simple question of what was the average transaction fee on the Stellar network last year, there's nothing available today. And that means that you would have to build and maintain your own data warehouse, which is no small task to do, especially if you're a smaller organization. It's time-consuming to ingest that data. It's expensive to transform the XDR into a human-readable format. And due to the sequential nature of transactions on the blockchain, if you're wanting that whole holistic view of your asset, you would have to ingest that data completely. And so SDF has recognized this gap, and we even realized it when we were trying to perform analytics ourselves, and we have built an open source data analytics platform. We call it Hubble. So Hubble is the full historical record of what has occurred on the Stellar network. And it is a modern data warehouse that is built with historical use cases and analytics in mind. Now, normally, when you think of data analytics, you might think of a report or a dashboard that you're opening with your morning coffee. But I would actually challenge you that that's a really narrow mindset of analytics and that it can be used for a much broader purpose. Since we're opening up the database to public access, you have the ability to ask any question that you want against this data. If you want to know who's using your asset today and at what scope, you could just write the SQL and get that answer returned to you. Let's say you work with a third-party organization and you might track your own flow of funds, but you need to know how those funds flow in and out of that third party. You could use Hubble as a source of record for this historical data. Let's say this product would have been awesome 2 years ago, but now I save all the data I need and I ingest everything. But you are subject to periodic regulatory audits and you want to be 100% certain your data is correct. You can use Hubble as that source of reconciliation. And lastly, if you're really excited about a data warehouse and have your own proprietary heuristics that you want to apply, use us as a warm start so you can shortcut the development process by either pulling our data into your data mart or pulling our code, forking that repo, and not having to start from scratch. And so I want to show you the tangible value that you can get from Hubble today, right now. And I'm going to do that by showing you a couple of examples using real-world assets to show you some of the reporting capabilities available, some of the unique capabilities that we design in Hubble that you're not going to find in other SDF products like Horizon, and then where we're going through the end of 2023. So for the first two demos, I randomly selected a company that I wanted to showcase a corridor outside USDC. I feel like we talk about dollars frequently. And so I want to show you how you could build a dashboard as if you were an on-off ramp that had issued your own assets. And so I selected ClickPesa, which is a business payments processor based out of East Africa. And I'm going to show you the reporting capabilities from their viewpoint. So to connect to Hubble, all you need is a valid Google Cloud project. Is this playing? Yes, okay. And so what you're seeing is the internal SDF Google Cloud project. There is a search bar on the left-hand page, if you're not familiar with BigQuery, where you can search for public data sets. So our data set is called CryptoStellar. The reason why we named it this is because there are a bunch of other blockchain protocols that also have public data sets in BigQuery. Now we've loaded a bunch of data dictionaries into the BigQuery UI, so you can get information about tables by clicking on them. There's going to be descriptions loaded for the columns, there's descriptions for the tables, and then BigQuery has this nice preview button, which would be the equivalent of you writing a select star on the table. So if you wanted to be insane and preview all 400 million records of this table, you have the ability to do so, knock yourself out. I have pre-written a query that is going to return the number of weekly active users for somebody who holds a ClickPesa asset. What I like about BigQuery is the fact that it has a syntax validator. So in the upper right-hand corner, if your SQL is correct, you will get this nice green check mark that tells you that it's runnable. It will also return to you how much that query is going to cost to run. So in this case, since we are profiling about a year worth of data, it's going to be a little expensive. It'd be about $2 to run this query. But since you are in control, you can determine how much that query costs by either lowering the amount of data that's returned or the time window there. So there's an array of open source data visualization tools that connect seamlessly to BigQuery. For this first demo, I am showing you Looker Studio, which is a product in the Google Suite. So adding a new data connection is as simple as clicking an Add Data button. What I like about this tool is they've added a bunch of connectors. So let's say you have your own internal database where you store data, whether that's in Postgres, or if you're even just tracking in Google Sheets right now. What you can do is you can connect your proprietary data with the Hubble on-chain data and then really create a holistic view of what you want to see. Now, I've already pre-cached this query because it takes a little while to run, but know that we have the weekly active users data loaded into Looker Studio, and adding a new chart is as simple as dragging and dropping a template onto the palette, where you can then determine what you want to plot. So in this case, we're going to plot over time the number of weekly active users per asset code. Now, it would be really boring to watch me create an entire report. So what I've done is I put my own creative hat on, as if I worked at ClickPesa, what would I be interested in? And I made a report that you could use, which I'm going to show you now. So even though I am doing this for the Tanzanian shilling, the Kenyan shilling, and the Rwandan franc, this is, of course, extensible to your own specific use cases, since you can write your queries yourself. With this tool, you have the ability to dump to a PDF and schedule this to run on some kind of cadence that makes sense to you. So if you had a list of stakeholders where you wanted to email this report, you have that ability to. In this case, I wanted to show what performance of these assets looked like, both just at the asset level, so what's the market cap, what's the total value locked on the network, but then also show you how are users actually using these assets today. So we've normalized this data to the US dollar so that we're comparing apples to apples for each of these tokens. And for the weekly payment volume, you can see that both shillings are used pretty frequently, but it seems like the Rwandan franc isn't used as much. And then again, the total value locked is about $200,000 in AMMs, with much less of that in a DEX. And this is where you can start to really query your data and ask questions of why, because you have access to Hubble. You might notice that the Rwandan franc has the exact opposite trend from both shillings, where more of its value is locked in the DEX. So why is that the case? Spoiler alert, I don't actually know. You would have to go and do that research yourself, but because this tool is open source, you could pull on those threads and really go down rabbit holes that you wouldn't be able to go down before. Looker Studio also has the ability to paginate. So if you want to tell a really broad story about how people are using your asset, you can do that. It might be interesting to plot the average transaction size. So are businesses sending a lot of really small dollar payments frequently, or are they batching those payments up and sending them on a monthly basis? Based on this graph, it seems like they're sending a lot of smaller dollar payments. Again, we can look at weekly active users. And what's really powerful about being able to profile this data over time is patterns start to emerge, and outliers also start to emerge. So in this case, we see this peak in March where there was this uptick in weekly active users. And by having a couple charts or different facets at which you can look at users, you could try and tell a story of why was there that peak. So maybe you would look at the average transaction size and see if that had increased. It had not. Weekly payment volume also didn't increase, so this is like really a weird scenario where maybe there was an arbitrage opportunity for the tokens and that caused that increase. But this is where I want to get into some of the unique capabilities of Hubble. So when you have these ad hoc questions that you really just want to solve a mystery for today, for this question, if you have the expertise or super users at your company, you could pull up a Jupyter Notebook, which is a really common data analysis tool that you can use for exploratory data analysis. And what you can do is you can write custom Python code in here where you can pull data from Hubble and then ask these harder questions. So in this case, I wanted to ask the question, what do the account balance distributions look like for ClickPeso wallets? Does it seem like people are using this more as an on and off ramp to cash in and out of local currency? Or are they using it as a store of value? And one thing you can do is plot a box and whiskers chart. You notice this doesn't really look boxy or whiskery, and that's because this data set is incredibly skewed. So one thing you might want to do is normalize that to try and get one of those nicer normal distributions. And when we normalize that, you realize, wow, this data is still super skewed. And this is where you might need the expertise of a data analyst or a data scientist to help find a better way to profile this data. But in this case, I just created a heuristic of maybe all we want to do is segment wallets into what we consider a liquid wallet, so is storing value on the network, versus an illiquid wallet, so someone who's cashing in and out of the network but not staying on the Stellar network. And so you have the ability to do this with Hubble. You can create those market segments and then publish a report that helps you study those over time. And now this, what we're about to see, is a superpower of Hubble. So with the current tools today, you can only ever see the current account balance because it tracks with the ledger state as it mutates through time. But Hubble saves a snapshot of every single ledger state. So if you want to rewind history, if you want to travel backward in time and say, what did these account profiles look like in 2022? You can do that just with a query. You don't have to re-ingest data. You don't have to replay history in order to do that. So to cut to the chase, the account profiles look exactly the same. Our results aren't really that interesting. I will also caveat this, I'm not a data analyst, so some of this is a little bit made up just to show you the art of the possible. But this is really where Hubble shines, and I recommend you play around and see how you can use this ability. It's also good at anomaly detection. So let's say that you needed to profile a large swath of data and surface those dates that were outliers for payment volume. You can write a query and return those dates directly into your notebook, where then you could pull that entire full history for those specific payment dates and really tell a story for what was happening so that you can understand and make more informed decisions on how people are using your assets. And again, since we store every ledger state through time, tracking something like market cap through time and plotting that is going to be so much easier because you can just sum the balances in a trust line versus having to sum every payment that's gone through a wallet. Now, it wouldn't be Meridian if we weren't talking about Soroban. So one thing that I'm really excited to announce is that Hubble also supports Soroban. So we were part of the successful testnet release on Wednesday, and we have some new tables that you can use in our test environment. We don't publicize that we have a public test data set, but we do. So if you need access, hit me up. But we're going to have some tables that specifically save contract data. So we have a code table. We're not crazy. We're not uploading the WASM directly to Hubble. But if you need to look at metadata events of how this contract instance has changed through time, you can do that. And then we also save the contract data itself. So we're taking a lighter touch approach to this. We're not saving everything under the sun, but that doesn't mean we can't save everything under the sun. So if we're missing something that you want, please let us know. This is a still evolving product. But we are saving enough information where you will be able to track asset balances through contracts as well. We also, if anyone attended Garen's talk this afternoon, we have a state expiration table. So if you ever need to restore a ledger key from the ESS, you could build a sink on top of Hubble and do that. Now for this last report, I'm going to show you a different data visualization tool. This one's called Metabase. It's what SDF uses internally for reporting. And this time we are actually going to look at it from the viewpoint of Circle. So let's say you wanted to build a dashboard and track a token as it flows from Classic through Soroban. Because we are saving the Soroban data, you have that ability today. Now you might notice this dashboard's pretty ugly. There's no time series, and that's because it's based on FutureNet data that we had, but it's just showing you the art of the possible. So you could track the total token transfers per day. You could also plot the transaction fees. Since the fee model is different, this could be of particular interest to help you with budgeting as you're getting used to the new fee model with Soroban. Where I think a lot of the power in Hubble lies is the fact that we are co-locating Classic data with Soroban data. So you can zoom out and get this comprehensive view of an asset. You don't have to look at specifically siloed Soroban data separate from Classic data. So if you wanted to plot the daily volume as it flowed in and out of Soroban and in and out of the Classic network operations, you can do that. Same with number of operations. What's a little bit interesting here is although the volume is greater in Classic, the number of operations are greater in Soroban, which we would expect because FutureNet is a testing environment for Soroban. And really, the sky is the limit. Like, you can be as creative as you want in the types of questions that you ask. If you want to ask a weird question like, what's the number of unique senders versus recipients through the Soroban asset contract, you could do that. If you wanted to plot the total value locked for this token in the contracts outside of accounts, you could do that. Now, I will not recommend this, but if you are a scary data hoarder and you want to just export all of the payment data and list like the top 20 transactions and use this like a block explorer, you could. It might be useful for validation purposes if you've deployed a contract, but please don't do this. But you can if you want. So get those creative juices flowing. I know you've probably had a lot of questions about your assets that you haven't been able to ask. So give yourself permission to start asking those kinds of questions because we have a platform that's here to help. And so that's it. That's all I got. The analytics platform is here. Hubble's incredibly versatile. You can use it for descriptive analytics, or if you're more data mature and want to grow into building a training data set to train an ML model, knock yourself out. You can do it. Since it is a pay per query model in BigQuery, it's incredibly flexible. You get to control the costs. And it's accessible. Both our code and data is public. So unlock those hidden insights to your assets today. Thank you.